Well, I sure am eager to meet with Jesus with you guys today. As we heard last week, man, religion is a lame hobby, right? So if we're here just to go through the motions and play the game today, there's probably a good couple hundred things you could be doing that would be better than this. And so we really want to meet with Jesus today. That's why we're here. I did want to mention first, before we going in the Word, the common rule. Hopefully you have heard by now, if you've been coming for a few weeks, that tomorrow everyone in our gospel communities is going to be going through this. We start going through this together. This book is built and designed to help you take charge of the habits of your life that actually form your life, right? Like at the end of your life, you're going to look back and it's nothing more than summation of a bunch of little habits. It's far less about the milestone markers and far more about the everyday, ordinary. So rather than being mastered by those habits, let's master them and use them to foster our spiritual formation and really drive our hearts to love God and love others. And that's what this is designed to do. So it's less about, hey, reading and intellect, and it's more about, hey, let's practice this. And so every week there's going to be a habit that you do, that you form, whether it's a daily habit or a weekly habit. And we're going to do this in community as a GC. So what not better way versus you trying to do this on your own? No, we're going to do this together. So if you don't have your copy, man, hey, 2 days prime, right? You can get it on Tuesday and get after it. All right, let's open the Bible. If you would, grab it and open to the book of Acts. And, I said this already, but it's not spelled like the teenage body spray, okay? The one that permeates 8th grade locker rooms. That's not what we're going for. If you're new to Christianity or the Bible, it's ACTS, okay? So just keep flipping right a long time and you'll find it. And we've been seeing a major theme in this book, the theme of radiate. We use that word radiate like we might say that a fire is radiating heat. Or we might say that someone's smile is radiating. Or we might say that the sunlight, the rays, are literally radiating that brightness, right? And so that's what we're talking about. Something of invaluable importance is spreading out from a central location. That's what radiate means, which is exactly what we've been seeing in the book of Acts, right? The message of Jesus is going out from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria, part 2, where we find ourselves in the book right now, and all the way on the way to the ends of the earth, which we're going to keep seeing as we keep going through the book, because the truth of Jesus is unmistakably compelling. And once it captures you on the inside, once it lands, like you can't hold it in, man, you have to radiate it out. And we've seen that kind of at a mass level, but today we're going to pivot. We see it more on an individual level. And I love that today just happened to land today. Tomorrow is MLK Day. And what we're going to see today is the gospel reach the first ever African. I love that. I love the timing of that. And this man who on the outside has it all together, we're going to see on the inside is very empty, and he is searching, which is maybe where you're at today as you come in. Maybe you're wondering where God is and if he cares, but we're going to find out today that God knows you're in the desert, and he's sending someone to you. In fact, that's why you're here today. And I'm going to bet that he's been whispering to you long before this morning ever came. And for those of us who have encountered Jesus like the man today we're going to see has, there's so much more for the Lord has for us. He's calling us into his redemptive work with us, right? We've seen this in the book of Acts. Hey, you can join the mission. Hey, you can partake in the story. He's calling you into this. Just like a surgeon needs a tool, he wants you to be his instrument of work. And that's an exciting thing to join him in his healing mission. And I've heard from many of you like, hey, but I'm afraid, right? Like I have all kinds of fears, man. I'm introverted. I'm not good with people. Like I'm not good with words. I don't know the Bible enough. And all these things we've been talking about, praying for our 3 and leveraging your pain as a platform for the gospel. And man, I just have great news today. And the great news is this: God has a lot of help for you today. Like if you're practical, like how to, like give me the steps, like coach me, like God's going to draw near to you today in a real personal way and go, hey, my son, hey, my daughter, let me show you how to do this. We're going to see how to effectively take the gospel to others in a very personal way. So, Acts 8, verse 26. Let's see the very first thing out of the gate. Now, an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go toward the south, so the road goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place. The angel of the Lord said, a.k.a. God spoke. God spoke. God is an active God. He is not silent, right? Like he's given you 757,000 words right here that are precious and priceless to give you direction for your life. And occasionally, not only does he give you these words, but he wants to draw near and speak very personal words to you. Our God is speaking. I want to always convince you of this very fact that you can actually have a relationship with God. Like you can. Like you don't have to go through me. You don't have to go through a podcast. Like you can encounter Jesus yourself. And I love this. And the word Jesus himself is going to say in John 10, hey, my sheep know my voice. Like you can really hear God's voice. Now, it's not something that happens overnight, but you cultivate it, just like you know people's voice in your own life over time. You've heard it enough, you go, yeah, that's their voice. And it's really the question isn't, is God speaking to you? It's, hey, are you listening? Are you listening? And so out of the gate, step one, if we're going to really radiate the gospel and we're going to minister personally to others, step one is to listen to God's direction. That's what we see here out of the gate. It's the rest of this passage is predicated on this first simple step because without it, nothing else follows. And so, hey, when was the last time you just sat still and listened to God? Right? Like when was the last time you opened the pages of these stunning words and just let the Spirit of God breathe life into you and spotlight certain things? When was the last time you asked God a question and then actually waited to hear if there was an answer? Right? Like, 'cause most of us, that's not what we do. We're in such a rushed, hurried pace. We are addicted to immediacy that we haven't slowed down enough to hear God's voice. Maybe you can relate to this, but recently I feel like more and more I'm becoming convinced that maybe the single greatest, not the single greatest, but one of the greatest aspects to health in a relationship is simply margin. Right? Time. Like to have unagendaed space to just be. Right? Like this is why many of you just loved the holidays. Right? Like I actually got to sit with my friend for 5 hours instead of 5 minutes. I had a long conversation with my spouse every night. Like there was an extra time because you weren't constantly going, right? And what happened? That relationship gets cultivated. This is, I think, a huge overlooked problem for us. Not only that it just keeps us from enjoying Jesus ourselves, but keeps us from being used by Jesus. We're simply too busy to be used, right? So is there the room in your life to hear God in his word, and then to hear God in the specific personal voice like we see right here in this passage? What does he say? What does the Lord speak to Philip? He says, rise and go. Rise and go. Where? Go south. So we see right here, this is true in the Bible as it is today, that those directly south of us badly need the gospel. Took some of you Texans a little longer than the rest of us, but obviously I love you Texans. It's all right. Go south towards on the road from Jerusalem to Gaza. Hey, go on this road. It's going to be over 60 miles. I put a map up here for you. You can see Jerusalem and then kind of coming down to the southwest, the desert road to Gaza. That's what we're talking about. Now, you probably don't know this, but Gaza is not a pretty destination town, okay? God is not sending him to Carlton Landing. God is sending him to the Panhandle, okay? Like those towns that you don't know the name of, that on your way to, a great trip in Colorado, like a cop is destined to ruin it because of his little speed trap for you. It's like that kind of place, okay? That's where God is sending him. This is a desolate, literally desert, desolate place. Like nobody's there. And don't even go there, but go to the road there. And on the road there's two roads. There's the more traveled, easier road, but it's longer, okay? So it's scenic, it's nicer, but it's longer. But if you want to get there faster, you go the desert road, where it's blazing hot. Nobody takes the desert road. That's where God's sending him. He's north, he's got to go south. He's in the city, he's got to go to the middle of nowhere. He's in the height of mass ministry, and God's sending him to an individual. Because our God always leaves the 99 for the one, right? This is not an easy, it's not an exciting, it's not a resume boosting assignment that he has for Philip. And not only that, he doesn't really give total definition. He gives him direction, but he doesn't know what he's going to do when he gets there, who he's supposed to talk to, what he's supposed to do. How many times is this true in our life, right? God says do A. He doesn't say B, C, and D yet. He says do A. And once you do A, then we'll get to B. And once you do B, then we'll get to C. And this is not what we like, but man, this is the way of the Lord. He frequently calls us to do A before B, and sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's not even rational. But what does Philip do? Verse 27, he rose and went. He obeyed. If we're going to love people with the gospel, if we're going to see the gospel spread and go forward and radiate, we need to leave what's comfortable. Number 2, leave what's comfortable. If we're going to be, if you know sports, there's that idea of a ready position, right? If we're going to be ready to field the grounder, we've got to be in position to be used. And ministry will not happen in a vacuum of convenience. Like it rarely shows up on your agenda, right? On your schedule. No, like it's always going to strain your time and strain your pocketbook and require you to do things that are uncomfortable. Then comes number 3. We're going to need to look for the Spirit's movement. He rose and went, and there was an Ethiopian, a eunuch, court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasury. He'd come to Jerusalem to worship, and he was returning, seated in his chariot, and he was reading the prophet Isaiah, and the Spirit said to Philip, go over and join this chariot. So you've got this dude. He's from Ethiopia, which is basically, at this time in history, the whole southern half of the continent of Africa. Everything south of Egypt, Ethiopia, okay? Massive area. Now, he's a eunuch, okay? Try not to explain this one to your kids later. We're going to try to avoid that conversation. But basically, right, if you served in the court, then this was a common practice, okay? Because, here's the deal, we want to take care of this on the front end in the hiring process. We don't want you getting any bright ideas around the queen, okay? So they take care of that. So he's Ethiopian, he's a eunuch, but he's not only just a court official, man, he's high up, okay? He's actually like the CFO. He's in charge of all the money. The whole treasury of the queen, this dude's running. But he had come to Jerusalem to worship. How strange. Wow, okay. Maybe he was of Jewish descent through the dispersion in the Old Testament. He had kind of centuries of Jewish descent. Maybe he was what we call a proselyte. He had converted to Judaism. Maybe he was just a Gentile, a non-Jew, but he was, believed in a one true God. We call it God-fear is what the New Testament calls it. We don't really know, but whatever the case is, the dude took time off, traveled hundreds of miles to pilgrimage to Jerusalem, probably for a festival. See, he's got questions, right? He's got questions, he wants answers. Somehow, some way, there's got to be a God out there more than just the gods of creation that we worship in Ethiopia in our pantheism. There's got to be something more. And so he goes to Jerusalem, but he doesn't find it. Imagine that. He doesn't find it because on the way back, he's still scouring the scriptures looking for answers, man. Which, by the way, shows a massive commitment from this dude. Like, he had to buy a scroll, which cost a load of money, which, of course, he probably had. But still, like, he's all in. He's all in. He's digging through the scriptures on the way home. See, long before we ever get to people, long before ever God sends us to people, he's already been at work. God's been preparing this man. He's been planting questions in his heart. He's let him feel the emptiness of life apart from him. And man, that's what God has been doing with some of you in here. I believe it. You've been thinking about eternity and maybe death or loss has hit your family, or depression or anxiety or addiction has you grasping for help. Maybe you're doubting your own doubts finally, right? Or financial pressure has hit you, or political exhaustion is sweeping over you, and you're going, there's got to be more out here than this. There's got to be more than work and come home and eat and Netflix and sleep and repeat until the next vacation. There's got to be more to that. And so maybe you're in a crowd here today, but God has an appointment with you, just like with this man. Because Jesus says, John 6:44, hey, no one comes to me unless the Father draws him. The Father was drawing this man. The Spirit had been preparing the soil. Why? Because if he doesn't, we would never come. Romans 3 is really, really clear. No one seeks God. Think about that. This man is seeking God. But the scriptures say no one seeks God. Meaning on our own, no one wakes up and says, you know what's a good idea today? God's a good idea. I think I'll go for him. Like no one does that. We are blind. In fact, we're more than just blind. Ephesians 2 says we're spiritually dead in our sin. Like you know what dead people do? Nothing. That's right. They do nothing. They don't make choices. They don't get better and fix themselves. They're dead. We don't just happen to stumble into Jesus, man. No, he scoops us off the bottom of the ocean and begins to resuscitate us. And that's what the Spirit has been doing in this man. He's thawing his frozen heart and beginning to awaken him to the glory of God. This is the eunuch story. And if you're in here and you're a believer, Jesus, this was your story too. Long before you ever said yes to him, he said yes to you. What a massive, massive comfort, right? Like as we think about taking the gospel to others, like here's what a freedom to know today. You're not the trailblazer. Like if you know much about dog sledding, which I'm sure most of you do, the person who goes out front is the trailblazer, which is what you don't want to do, right? Because you're piling the snow as you go. You're literally at a snail's pace and you're exhausting yourself, and then everyone else just comes behind you, flies past you. The Spirit's doing the trailblazing work. We get to just kind of come in the path behind. The Spirit then tells Philip something very specific. I love this. What a prompting. Hey, that chariot over there. See that one? Yeah, that one. I love this. He's going to connect the dots. And so we've got to have our radars up, right? We've got to be ready to hear the Spirit's prodding. Like our senses got to be dialed in. So I was at Stella Nova in Norman this week. And I was talking with someone. I had a meeting with someone, and it was at one of those really large, like he had already sat down at one of those really large tables. And so I'm sitting down, and I'm sitting, it was kind of packed, right next to someone else. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm about to have a conversation with this person, and like you're right next to me. It's not like the table next to me, it's like the chair next to me. Like you're about to hear all of this, right? And so throughout the conversation, I kind of glance over, and I see that she's reading, and then I see, oh, she's reading the Bible. And so then I'm obviously curious, right, what she's reading. And so at the end of the conversation, I kind of apologized. You know, I'm sorry we were talking. I know you're trying to read. And anyways, I walk out, and like it's remarkable to me how insensitive I was in terms of the radar of the Spirit. Like here's the passage I'm preaching this week, right? Philip's about to go up to this man and go, hey, what are you reading? You understand it? You think I could have said that to her? Just maybe? Like, do you think maybe God had been like saying, hey, here you go. Let me lob this out. And yet it didn't even cross my mind. Like my radar was not dialed in. Like we need to look for the Spirit's movements. Number 4. We're going to see in verse 30. Go over and join this chariots. Verse 30. So Philip ran to him. Oh, I love that. Man, he could have said no in this moment, right? Like seriously, like you ever said no in a moment like this? Oh yeah, right? Like you're at work and it's like, oh, here we go. No, let's talk about fashion instead, right? Yeah. I mean, I've never done that, but maybe you have. Man, this was a tough moment, right? Like this dude is different than him. He's from a different country, different culture, different skin color, different class of society. He doesn't know him at all. And yet he's not afraid of these differences. Like he's not afraid of the awkwardness that's about to happen. Not only the awkwardness, like he's about to approach a royal caravan. Like, hey, get rid of this dude, he's annoying me. Like there's a lot of things that could go wrong here in this moment, right? But he doesn't tiptoe out timidly. He doesn't shrink back in fear. He runs, man. Like how do you get rid of that kind of fear? How do you overcome that kind of fear? The Bible makes it clear there's one way. Love. Love drives out fear. Love swallows up this kind of fear. Love says, despite my fear, I'm going to step in with boldness because I care too much about you. I care more about you than I care about how I'm perceived. Love swallows up apathy and indifference. And so if we're going to reach people with the gospel, number 4, we got to love those different than you. And this is going to take a choice, right? Like you're faced with a choice. I'm going to love them enough to run to them. And not only will we need to love them to run to them, but then how we will love them is important. Look at the rest of the story. What does he do? Does he burst onto the scene and preach? Nope. Verse 30. So Philip ran to him, and he, what? Heard. Bingo, he's listening. He heard this man was reading Isaiah the prophet, and he what? Asked. Okay, simple formula. Listen, ask. All right, great. Do you understand what you are reading? I love this, right? Like he doesn't parachute in and start blasting him with the gospel any more than like your doctor blasts through the room with a scalpel ready to go. Like, no, he's going to assess the situation first. He's going to learn what's going on. Like, I love this. He doesn't presume to know what's happening with the eunuch and what matters to the eunuch and what questions the eunuch has. He's a good guide, and a good guide must know the terrain. Number 5, we have to learn their story. Philip is willing to learn his story. We got to learn their story, man. See, the gospel is like a Swiss Army knife. It has every tool you need for the job. It has a saw, a knife, scissors, even has a toothpick. I mean, that's handy, right? Although it's pretty gross. Also, like, who reuses a toothpick? But hey, it's in there. It's got whatever you need for the job. But you need to know what tool you need for the job before you use it. So it is with people. Is this person I'm coming upon racked with guilt? Are they knee-deep in addiction? Are they coming out of a different religion? Are they weighed down with grief and despair? Are they cruising through the American dream life, pursuing comfort? They don't really feel their need for God. Like, where is this person at, right? Like, we've got to enter into their world, not just tell them about ours. Paul Tripp, in his book, Instruments in the Redeemer's Hands, calls this entry gates. I love this. Someone's entry gate. And it's the gate by which we move from a casual relationship to the heart level. And so as people talk about their problems in their life and you hear their issues, like, we don't focus merely on the problem, but we instead look for their experience of the problem. Okay? So maybe, like, you know, what's on their mind in the middle of it? What are they struggling with? What are their questions? What's keeping them awake at night? What are the emotions that they're feeling through it? So, like, maybe you're talking at work or you're with a neighbor or whatever, and a friend's husband didn't come home last night. Or maybe someone didn't get that promotion, or there was a breakup, or maybe you didn't pass that entrance exam into the next level of your schooling, you got to change your career, or all kinds of things. Maybe you just learned that someone's parent passed away. Well, what's the wrong move in that moment? The wrong move is to start teaching doctrine in that moment. Someone's parent passed away, and you go off on a spiel about eternity and heaven and hell and how you can have hope if you're a believer. Like, that's not the right first move. Right? Like, it's if you came in this morning and you were frazzled because you were 15 minutes late, and on your way out the door, right, which inevitably happens, your kid pooped. Like, you're getting in the car and, like, boom, explosion. Like, here we go again, right? Every Sunday morning, right about this time. And then on your way here, you got stuck behind a train. Right? Because that happens. And you walk in, and your hair's all windblown, and you're frazzled, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm just, you know. And I walk up, and I hear a little bit about what's going on, and I'm like, you know, you really shouldn't have taken 4th Street. Like, you really need to come under 19th to get here. Like I said, well, much better way. This won't happen again. Like, that might be true, but, like, I just forever lost my ability to talk to that person, right? They're not coming to me again to pour their heart out, and they don't trust me anymore. I'm not safe. And so really what's going on in that person's heart and that mom in that moment is what? Entry gate is anxiety, embarrassment, right? Burden of caring for people. Like, these are the things that are going on in that mom's heart in that moment. And so rather than hitting those things, I'm going to hitting these other things. I'm going to hit those things, man. I'm going to meet her where she's at and go, you know what? has rest for exhausted parents this morning. You know what? Jesus knew what it was like to be burdened by caring for other people constantly. And he was often delayed in his own ministry and interrupted. Jesus totally gets you. Like, let's go worship him. Like that's meeting someone where they're at, in their entry gate, right? It's this person who maybe their parent passed away. Maybe they feel guilt. Maybe they feel guilt like they could have prevented it. Maybe they feel guilt because there's some part of them is actually glad because now they're out from the abuse of that relationship. Or maybe there's fear and anxiety over all of the surrounding issues legally and financially they got to take care of now. Right? There's just so many different things. Maybe there's so much regret they didn't reconcile that relationship. These are the entry gates. We've got to learn someone's story, and we do that by listening and asking, not by showing up on the scene and belting out the gospel. Let's ask and let's listen and let's learn, because no matter the entry gate, the gospel can always enter it. Always. The gospel is not only this beautiful 30,000-foot level transcendent message of truth that is timeless, which it absolutely is. It is also intensely personal. And it comes onto the ground and it meets us exactly where we're at. It met you where you were at, if you're a believer in here today, right? Maybe you were in college and you're asking questions to all of life's difficult answers. Maybe the gospel found you as you were staring at a diagnosis. Maybe the gospel met you as a 7-year-old before you were really even exposed to much evil in the world. The gospel met you where you were. Maybe it was on the heels of a painstaking divorce. The gospel always meets us where we're at. And the gospel has met the eunuch where he is at. He is reading Isaiah 53. And I imagine he was on Isaiah 53 because only a few short chapters from Isaiah 53 is the most hopeful, the most potent, concentrated passage about eunuchs. It's probably what he was reading. Is there any hope for me? Because when I go to the temple, I can't go to the inner circle because I'm not a Jew and because I'm a eunuch. Is there anything for me, or will I always be outside the presence of God? That's what's burning probably on this dude's mind. Philip, you had to enter into his world. He's reading Isaiah and he can't understand. You ever been there? You're like, yeah, all 66 books, not just Isaiah. What does this mean, he says? We can read the Bible all day and miss Jesus, right? Miss understanding it. We need the Spirit of God to open it up. Hey, teach me, show me. By the way, do you ask God to do that when you open the Bible? You should. If you open this like it's a history book or like in any other novel and you don't ask the Spirit of God to illuminate this for you, you're running some roadblocks. And then we need guides. We need teachers. How can I show? How can I understand this unless someone guides me? Man, this is God's good gift of grace to you to have GC leaders and elders and commentaries and dead theologians who can speak truth and that you have access to that. Like, that's crazy, right? At your fingertips, you can get answers to difficult questions about the Bible. But this is the content that Philip goes to. Number 6, let's lean into the Bible. We make the mistake of talking a lot with people about our own opinions and our own words when we need to just, hey, let's look at this together. Let's see what God has to say about this. When we talk in our words, it's like shooting out of a BB gun. But when we open this word, it's a bazooka of truth, man. The power of the Bible can cut through and pierce the human heart. What if I'm talking to someone, Tyler, who doesn't believe in the Bible, and they just miss this? Anything I say for the Bible, like, yeah, that's the Bible, I don't believe that. Hey, still use it because it really does have the power to pierce anybody's armor, first of all. And second, well, this is a great opportunity to go to that person and through that conversation go, okay, well, what is your authority? Because nobody doesn't have an authority. Everyone has an authority. Ours is just clear. We're upfront about it. Our authority is this. What's yours? Is it culture today? Is it your own ability to sort through everything and figure it out in your mind? Is it some other religion? Like, what is your authority? Something is. But this is going to be our content. This is going to be our guide. And you're like, man, I'm going to fumble through it, though. Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to be perfect with it, right? Spirit's already been trailblazing. You can say, hey, let's look this up together. I'm not actually sure. You can be a learner with them. And as you lean into the Bible, don't only show them what's in the Bible. You've got to do what Philip does. Look at verse 35. 34. And the eunuch said to Philip, about whom I ask you, does prophets say this in Isaiah? Is it about himself or is it about someone else? And Philip opened his mouth, and beginning with this scripture, he did what? He told them the good news about Jesus. Man, at the end of the day, we've got to lead them to Jesus. We can't just open up the Bible. We've got to lead them to Jesus. We can open the Bible, and we can talk all day about morality or sexual ethics or history, and we can miss the main thing, right? Like we see this all the time. This is what the Pharisees did. They knew the Bible. They didn't know Jesus. This is what a lot of churches right here in our area do. Man, they're biblical. Okay, cool. Are you gospel? Are you leading people to Jesus? Are we conforming moral behavior? Or are we trying to just tackle secondary issues? We actually about Jesus here, right? Show them the Savior. Maybe here's a good question to ask yourself. When you talk with people about Jesus, are you announcing to them good news? Are you arguing? Are you explaining? Are you announcing good news? Philip opened his mouth. It is always necessary to open our mouth. He opens his mouth. And after announcing the good news and conversing and directing him in how to respond, then there was a beautiful time to what? Close his mouth. Close his mouth. Number 8, we got to let them respond, okay? We've just told them everything, but now we got to give them space, because somewhere between verse 35, verse 36, the eunuch believed the message about Jesus. I'm sure Philip had directed him in how to repent and believe and be baptized, and that's exactly what happens, because as they were going along the road, they just came to some water, middle of the desert, I love that, and the eunuch said, see, hey, here's water. What prevents me from being baptized? Let's do this. And he commanded the chariot to stop. They both went down into the water, Philip and the eunuch. He baptized him. He responded, hey, the gospel demands a response. In fact, it elicits a response regardless of whether you want to respond or not. You are responding. And so we need to coach and direct people in how to respond to this message. And then we just need to back off and give space and allow the Spirit to do His work. We don't need to force them into a response. Maybe a response is going to take weeks and weeks and weeks for them. Of you being consistent, you being faithful, and you can continue to say the same thing 12 times before finally the Spirit activates and ignites that fire. Let's give them space, though. And they go into the water, and which is why we dunk people, right? They go into the water, go down, and he's baptized, right? I love this. Like, what's to prevent me from being baptized? We have a baptism Sunday coming up in a couple months, and I'd love to do baptisms every week, but it's a massive deal to kind of set that up in here, get the hose. Like, we're here for hours beforehand just trying to fill up this tank, okay? And so we're not going to do it every week, but in March we have one coming up. We've already got 3 people who are going to get baptized, and so maybe if you're thinking about, well, have I, should I? Like, I would love to invite you to this attitude. Why shouldn't I? If you've met Jesus and haven't been baptized, maybe you say, well, I just don't think it's that important. Well, hey, not only did Jesus tell you to do it, but he also did it himself. It's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal. And I don't know if it's a good way to start off your lordship relationship of Jesus. Like, hey, you're in charge of my life, but hey, I don't want to do this first thing that you told me to do after I made you Lord. Right? Like no, like I'm gonna shout this out of what has happened inside of me. And okay, maybe that's not the reason. Maybe you just go, hey, I don't want to get baptized because I was as a baby. And we have dear brothers and sisters who believe that is legit baptism. We don't. We would say, hey, that was a great, wonderful decision by a parent to want to raise you and dedicate you as a child and dedicate themselves as a parent to showing you Jesus, but you didn't actually respond to the gospel with faith as an infant, and so that wasn't baptism. Maybe you go, what will people think of me? Like, I'm older, or like, people think I've been a Christian for a long time. That was me. I got baptized in seminary. Like, I wrestled with it for a long time, as you can imagine, because what are they going to think? Oh my gosh, I'm in seminary, right? Oh, I got to make sure they know, like, I've been a Christian. Like, so much pride in that of caring about what people thought of me. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's like, well, what's my family going to think? I don't want to offend them, right? Which is just crazy that our family would get offended. Like, this has nothing to do with the family. This is our personal response to Jesus. This has nothing to do with how they raised us or what they did or didn't do. I think you can coach your family through that. Hey, this is my decision. This is my response to Jesus. Like, you're good. This has nothing to do with you. Maybe you've made this one. I'm just not ready. I've got to get my act together. Like, maybe I've got to take some classes, 3 years of confirmation, pass an exam, go on a mission trip, and get a lot of Christian t-shirts. Then I can get baptized, right? Hey. Which is the exact opposite of what you're doing in baptism, where you as an unclean, unholy person are showing the gospel has come to clean you and make you holy. But you're not holy on your own. Like, that's what we're saying. You are saying, I am a wreck, I am messed up. Christ saved me by grace. So don't wait. Do what this Ethiopian has done. Let's stop the chariot right now. And I love this, man, because he's not afraid. Like, think about this. His whole entourage is there, right? It's a little undignified for this dude to get up and go down into the water and do this. Not only is it undignified, what is his dad going to say when he gets back to Ethiopia? What is the queen going to say? Like, there's some real ramifications. He could lose his job. He'd be booted out of society, culture. Who knows what's going to happen? But he plants his flag anyways. Philip let him respond. Verse 40. Let's see how this closes up. Verse 39. And when they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord carried Philip away, which is awesome, right? I mean, that could be natural. It could be like, he just kind of walked off into the sunset, peace out. But I don't think that's probably what happened. Like, I really think this is supernatural type language, right? Like, we're talking about teleportation. Okay, just throwing that out there. Jesus himself did that after he raised from the dead, right? Like, I don't know about you, but this is one of the things that I'm pretty stoked about in heaven. Like, probably top 10, maybe top 5. Can't wait. Just saying. Okay, wow, that's a little bizarre. Why did God do that? Just doling out miracles for fun? No, I think this was a sign to the caravan. I think this was a miracle to authenticate the message of the gospel to this band of Ethiopians with him. Hey, did you see that guy who just disappeared? He has a message for you. And we learn from Eusebius, we learn from other church historians, that this band goes back to Ethiopia, and that's where the first African church is planted. It's through them. So I think that's what God is up to and why that happened. It's kind of a side note. But, carried Philip away. The eunuch saw him in the morning, went on his way rejoicing. God, I love that, right? Saw that 2 weeks ago. But Philip found himself at Azotus, and as he passed through, he preached the gospel to all towns until he came to Caesarea. Okay. Number 9, he lived this way. Philip lived this way. Philip then gets transplanted to Azotus, and he begins to make his way up the Mediterranean coast doing the exact same thing, right? Rinse and repeat. Let's keep going. This is going to be a lifestyle way to live. We're going to listen to God's direction. We're going to leave what's comfortable. We're going to look for the Spirit's movement. We're going to love those different than us. We're going to learn their story. We're going to lean into the Bible. We're going to lead them to Jesus and let them respond. And then we're going to keep living this way. Philip didn't wait for the next angel to come, spotlight someone again. No, this is my ordinary, everyday routine now. This is my rhythm. Because you can't have 9 points, I want to give you a 10th. Number 10, before any of this happens, the precursor to this whole passage, labor in prayer. We've seen it throughout the book of Acts. Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 6, chapter 8. Prayer, 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 prayer. They're gathering, they're praying. And I don't think they're praying about their aunt's ankle. It might be. That might be important. But they're probably praying for non-believers, is what I'm trying to say. They've probably been praying for the gospel to spread to Africa. We've been praying for this. When you devote yourself, keyword devote yourself to prayer, guess what? All these other things start happening. You start hearing God's voice more. You start being able to pick up on the Spirit's movement. You start caring more about the person you're praying for. Become more sensitive to their story. You get more serious about wanting to learn the Bible. All these things are happening because you have devoted yourself to prayer. Okay, so what do we do with this? Let's wrap this up by me asking you two questions. One, are you sharing Jesus like this? Because I know most of you, very few of you in here are like, yes, this is my life, right? Like, I'm pumped about this. Let's keep going. I want to encourage you that this can be, but I know where most of you are right now. You probably feel a little bit of a drive-by guilting. You're like, no, I don't love people like this, and I don't listen to God's voice, and definitely don't know the Bible well enough to be able to do this. And so, like, okay, more guilt, more shame, another thing I'm failing at, Tyler. Let's be honest, that's where a lot of you, maybe that's landing right now. When that happens, we need to do what? We need to gospel ourselves. So I'm going to gospel you for a moment. Guess what? God knows. God knows you're not hitting all of these. In fact, that's exactly why Jesus came, right? That's why he was tortured on your behalf. He didn't send you out as a perfectly holy vessel who has it all together. This is not a surprise to God. He's not shocked. He knows, right? And so you don't need to gaze in self-pity or turn inward or go, poor me. No. You've been rescued from sin's penalty and from its power. Yes, you're a broken vessel, and that's who Jesus uses, broken vessels. And so you can stare right back at Satan as he's accusing you right now and go, rejoice not over me, O my enemy. For when I rise, when I fall, I will rise. And when I sit in darkness, man, the Lord will be a light to me. This is not a surprise. And maybe you go, well, I don't feel guilt and shame, but man, I feel fear and timidity and inadequacy. I'm bad at this. Like, I just don't like being around people very much. And I'm not good with my words. And like, I definitely don't know the scriptures like other people. Please, God, pick someone else. I'm not the right person. Let me gospel you. The bad counsel would say this. Hey, like, you can do this. Like, just pull yourself together, man. You're an overcomer. Just get up in the morning and just slay, right? Like, just get it. Like, you got this. It's all inside you. That's not the gospel. I'm going to actually say something different. Guess what? You are inadequate. Guess what? You probably don't know the Bible enough. Yeah, you might even be really bad with people. Guess what? You're not the hero. It's okay. We have one hero. That slot has been filled. Praise God, it's not us. He is not counting on you to nail the speech, all right? Like, that's not how this works, man. You had it all the way up until that point. You said that word, Spirit of God, detract. Like, no, that's not how that works, man. This is in his hands, and it's so freeing to know that you're not the first-round draft pick. Jesus is. You are inadequate. He is not. I was scared to death as a kid of the Texas Giant. You guys know that roller coaster? Remember, 4th grade, looking up at that sucker. It's high, it's fast. No way. No way. Besides, it's wooden. Right? Like, I mean, what is it? We're in the 21st century, people. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, the Egyptian pyramids had more technology and advancement than this, right? This is all we can do? Wooden roller coaster? I'm not feeling good about this. Well, my dad finally said, we're doing it. We're doing it. You don't have a choice. Actually, he kind of bartered with me a little bit. He said, as we go through the line, waiting, that I could punch him in the stomach the whole way, right? Like, as a 4th grade kid, you're like, yes, let's do deal. I'm done. Like, I'm ready. And if you don't know my dad, he was an Olympic gymnast, okay? So punching his stomach was like punching a brick wall. And so I did it once, so I kind of got the bad end of that deal. But we get up there, and whole way up this rickety thing, like, I'm terrified. I'm like thinking, this is awful, bad decision. What did I do? I'm looking at my family members that really hate you right now. And we kind of get slingshotted over, right? And you start going down. It's like 60-something miles per hour. I'm freaking out. But then what begins to happen? That freak out panic starts to turn into, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And then like, oh, this is actually fun. Oh, I like this, right? Like, this is cool. And by the time that few minutes ends, we roll back in. I'm like, roll it back, baby. Let's do this sucker again, right? That's how loving people with the gospel is. That's how telling people about Jesus is. Yes, there's a lot of fear. Yes, you're inadequate. Yes, you can't do it. But once you know that Jesus is riding with you, man, let's do this and let's keep doing it. It's exciting. Are you sharing Jesus like this? Question number 2 is our band comes back up and we begin to sing. Have you met Jesus like this? Man, if you're unsure whether you know Jesus or not, you can't maybe talk about that, what it was like for you to come to know him. Maybe you don't know him. Maybe you grew up in church, but that's not going to cut it. Maybe you're in a cush spot right now in life and you've got, bank accounts set and kids are healthy and you're in a great relationship with someone or you love your job or whatever. That's not going to cut it, right? There's an angst and maybe there's a gnawing inside of you. There's got to be more, like this guy said. There's a wonderful promise. Jeremiah 29:13, God says this: if you seek me, you will find me. If you seek me, you will find me. If you seek me with all your heart. If you are honest enough and humble enough to actually sincerely come after me, I will reveal myself to you, the Father says. If you're seeking in here today, what you're going to find is breathtaking, church. You're going to find the one who's the true and better Philip, the great missionary. Rise and go. That's exactly what he did. He rose from his throne in heaven and he left what was comfortable and he went to the desert of humanity to love those who were different than him. That is our Jesus, and that is what he's done for you. And he's come to lead you out, right? He's come to free you. And the way that he did that is absolutely stunning, and I want to read it to you. We're going to close by reading Isaiah 53 together, where this eunuch was reading from. Isaiah 53, starting verse 1. Who has believed what they heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men would hide their face. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Remember, this is written 800 years before Jesus. Let's keep going. Verse 4. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken. We esteemed him smitten by God and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Hear that substitution language. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. All of us like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Here's where the eunuch was reading. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, but he didn't open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that is before its shears silent, he opened not his mouth. Jesus willingly died on our behalf. He consented to guilt. Not his guilt, but ours. The finger was pointed at him in blame, and he willingly took it. He shut his mouth so he could shut death's mouth. And by oppression and judgment, he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of people. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich man in his death. Although he had done no violence, there was no deceit in his mouth. But it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for sin, and when he sees that offering, he shall see and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous and bear their iniquities. That is us. That is what the Messiah Jesus has done for us. That is the gospel. It's what Philip shared. It's what the Ethiopian believed. And it's the one that's offered to you today, that Christ himself has died for you in your place as your substitute, risen again to now empower you to rise and go and take it to others. So let's pray to him right now, church. Jesus, thank you that you are the risen King, and in victory you stand right now, continuing to reveal yourself to more and more and more people. Jesus, I thank you for those in this room right now today who are seeking, perhaps, who are asking and doubting and searching for truth and looking for more to life than the flatness and emptiness and that they feel. And I praise you right now, God, that you have ordained this moment, that you are intercepting them. You are moving and speaking directly to them. Would their eyes be open so that they would see that and believe and put their trust in you, Jesus, and feel the freedom and relief and joy that comes from having sins washed and cleansed. And Dad, I pray that you would continue to stir others to seek. And I pray for those of us in this room who have met you, that you have met us. We pray, Jesus, that you would begin to empower us, that you would remove guilt and shame for how much we're failing at this, but rather just continue to keep our eyes cast upon you. You're the hero in all of this. And so we bring our broken vessels to you right now and go, Lord, lead us in this. We want to be an instrument in your hand. We want to be used for you. We want our lives to count for the kingdom and to be rippled out in an impact for others to come to know and taste and see the goodness of Jesus that we have. So would you do that right now? We sing to you and thank you for your mercy in this mission.